Welcome everybody to Appalachian Trail Talk, leg number 7, which goes from resupply at Gatlinburg into basically to Devonport Gap to the Standing Bear Farms, where we did the next resupply. I have this up because I want to talk a little bit about Clingman's Dome. I had a comment from AT Cheerio, who reminded us that this road that goes up from the road to the parking lot, is actually due to closure for sure between these dates. Okay, and anytime there's snow or ice. And this spring you had an instance where there were some hikers that were coming out of Gatlinburg on the shuttle and got up the Newfound Gap, but the road was closed up to Clingman's Dome for snow and ice, and they either had to hike backwards to get to basically get up to Clingman's Dome, or skip that 8 miles. And some of them elected to go back into town and spend another night versus actually rewalking 16 miles or doing 16 to get 8, if you will, and the impact that would have on their food and their resupply to get where they were going to go. So just a reminder that if you do get off at Clingman's to go into town, and if it is early in the year, you are subject to having some issues actually getting back up to Clingman's Dome. All right, so Gatlinburg, as we mentioned last time, I ended up going to Newfound Gap to get into town, and then came back out and mentioned that somebody wanted to try and do just a quick turn down there. They probably might be able to find themselves able to get here to this ice water spring shelter. This is a pretty nice shelter, and if I remember right, there's plenty of tenting spaces, although they're kind of on a slant, on a slope, and I can't remember about hammock spaces here, but there is a beautiful view, and the water is pretty close there, just down the AT a little bit to the north. But this is a very well-worn route. People will park here, do a day hike up to the shelter, take some pictures, head back down again. I'm going to insert a photograph of just how worn the trail is there. Okay, after the icy spring shelter, I had a long day ahead of me on this day, if I remember right, to get to my next spot, and it was so I elected to skip this Charlie Bunyan's, and I really regret that now. I heard a lot of people talking about some of their most favorite spots in the whole Smokies to go to, sometimes on the whole trail even. So I really regret missing this Charlie's Bunyan here, and I'm sure there's some folks that will comment that will confirm that I made a mistake by not going over there to that area to see that and get some photographs. But I elected to keep going, and with my next goal in mind of getting to Peck's Corner Shelter for the night. Okay, Peck's Corner Shelter. So a little bit of a descent back down, and this was a little frustrating because it was really running late in the day. I was fighting the sunset, and I had to go a half a mile down a trail to get down to the shelter. When I got down to the shelter, it was full, of course, and there were already tents everywhere. I had a hard time finding a spot, but I did finally manage to find a spot to put a tent down. Got it pitched, and then went over at least to the shelter, to the little cooking area to be able to have my dinner. And by then it was pitch black dark, and so I was cooking and eating by headlamp. That was a wicked cold night that night, and in fact, I think if I remember, I still had my little thermometer with me, little skiing thermometer you put on your zipper on your coat. It was 22 degrees in my tent. My tent tended to keep things about 10 degrees, 8 degrees to 10 degrees warmer. So it was pretty wicked cold that night. And as I remember coming up and getting up here to some views, there was a spectacular view of an ice fog, I guess, had rolled in that night. It was a little bit prominent down here at the shelter, but when you got up here, it was really definite where the ice had come in and clung to everything, and was a kind of a little winter wonderland. I got a couple of pictures here that I'll put in that kind of shows what that looks like. All right, some of the prettiest views I had on the trail were kind of coming up through this area. If you look towards Tennessee, the mountains were more kind of dwindling off, if you will, towards the flat area. But you look the other way towards North Carolina, it was just ridge after ridge after ridge. It's just absolutely beautiful, beautiful scenery. And let's see, I will throw in. I think I got a nice view, and I may have used one of them as the intro slide here, but here I'll throw another one in. I got to this tri-corner knob shelter early afternoon. I was one of the first guys there. I was looking at whether or not I could get down to Cosby Knob. I wasn't sure I really could. I wasn't really feeling that well. Still kind of nursing my knee. I can't remember what was going on. It's just I kind of got there and just took a long lunch and went, you know what, I'm not going anywhere today. And I just chilled out for the rest of the day there. I had an experience with one of the hikers that came in, who asked me to take his photograph for him. I said sure, and I took the photograph. And he said his grandfather recently died, and his grandfather was a very I guess prominent photographer. And when the family went through to divide up his stuff or their inheritance, the only thing that people kept were pictures that had the grandfather in it. All the rest of his photography that he spent his lifetime doing, they threw away. So he's like, I'm going to make sure that I have some pictures with me in it, so that my stuff doesn't get thrown out. So I thought that was kind of sad, but maybe telling for the rest of us that what we put value on, others may not, and what they put value on may credit us for having some value in their lives. Okay, kind of got some water sources up here at the top, which is kind of odd. I don't really remember them, to be honest with you. And then once again, some good photography. I remember I got down here as I was getting close here to Cosby Knob Shelter. It was getting into the afternoon, and Hamfist and Rabbit were going to try and make Newfound Gap Shelter that night. And the reason they were is we had heard that a really wicked cold snap was coming through, and we didn't want to still be in the Smokies. Not that next night, but the night after that was supposed to be pretty bad for a couple of nights. So we wanted to get out of elevation. So I remember sitting here at this intersection with a trail sign going down to the shelter, going, "What do I do?" It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's 7.1 miles. That's more than a height coming out of Newfound Gap, but it was down, and you'll see it's even more down. And so I decided I would go for it, which meant for me I think a 14.8 mile day, which was a very significant day for me at this point, and this is in the Smokies. So I went for it and headed down once again to Gatlinburg Gap, and you can see that you're in the exit of the Great Smoky Mountain National Park here. Okay, eventually we're going to be coming all the way down here where it crosses I-40. Okay, but that next night we stayed here at the shelter. Now this shelter is one of the, at least in 2016, was one of the last ones that still had a cage around it, and I will put a picture of that cage here. It's a selfie. One of my selfies I think I try to do every morning, but you'll see the caging stuff in front of the shelter. Okay, they used to do that to keep the bears out, but what happened is hikers would tease the bears with food behind the fence, and actually made the bear problem worse. And so they came in and they, at least up to this shelter, they'd taken all the fencing away to try and help change that tide. There's no place to put tents here, if I remember right. And I don't remember hammocks. But if you go away from the shelter, there's probably some hammocking trees, but there wasn't hardly anything for tents around this area. So just be aware of that. As we came out and came down out of the park, down here at the Gap, we came across the first blooming flower of spring, and it was a trillium. It's really pretty, and there's a lot of these that I found on my hike last year, and it seemed like they were all different kinds and shapes and colors. But let me show you what a trillium looks like. Okay, and from there, it would basically you're going to continue the descent. It came under I-40, came across, and then started up. And if I remember right, there was some signs up in here somewhere about a possibility of going and doing a resupply somewhere else, but I can't remember what that was exactly. But when you get here to the road, it's a gravel road. You turn right to go down the road a couple hundred yards, and then you'll turn left and go up into the mountains again. Or you're going to hit the road, you're going to turn left, you're going to walk up, I don't know, about a 0.2 or so. Verizon you can get down here at the road. If you hike up to the Standing Bear Farms hostel, you only have AT&T service up there. And for some of the AT&T people, that was the best service they'd had so far since starting out their hike. For Verizon, that was about the first time I didn't have a signal where somebody else did. All right, Standing Bear Farm. The gentleman that had really been hit, it was his heart and passion. I can't remember his name now. He had passed away, and his widow was trying to do her best to keep it up, but it was. I think it was probably due to some bad help that she had, that it was falling into disrepair and it's quite dirty. The shower worked for us when I was there, but I heard other people say that it stopped working. There was no washing machine. You washed your clothes out in a tub and you ran them through a wringer, and then there was a dryer of sorts. It was a kind of electric dryer. It didn't get things really clean, but it was free. They didn't charge for that. I'll show you a picture what the bunk room kind of looked like, and there's a potbelly kind of a stove in there. We didn't use it the first night, although we wish we had. The second night was just wicked cold, even down here at this altitude. So see, we're down here at only 2,000 feet, not even that. And we stayed there 2 nights because of the really bad temperatures that were going to be up here. So, all right, now resupply. They do have a little resupply shed there. They have some freezers in there. You got sodas and pizzas and hamburgers and things like that you can heat up, and then you've got other things that you can buy to resupply yourself until you get to, I think, the next resupply. Don't hold me to this because I didn't look at this ahead of time, but I think it's going to be Hot Springs is the next resupply. So I believe you can. And I only resupplied for 2 days. I think you can. Well, I may have done 3 because this R2 is based upon thinking I'd be up to 15 miles a day by now. So I probably did 3 days worth of food. Anyway, so I think you can send a package here if you want to. This is also a place where you can have them go get your dog and bring them to you if you've had to shuttle him around the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. All right, everybody. I'll end here with some random shots of the Standing Bear Farm so you can see what that hostel looks like. All right, everybody. More later.